So we are recording these conversations on Facebook Live so that we can send them to folks who missed them. Thank you so much for joining us. And today I have with me Alex Lawson from Social Security Works, who's going to talk to us about the importance of Social Security, especially during this emergency time, this time of COVID-19. Alex, I'll let you take it away.
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me. My name's Alex Lawson. I'm the Executive Director of Social Security. We fight to protect and expand Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and to lower prescription drug prices. And we think all of that is related in creating some economic security for folks in retirement, but it's actually through their whole life. That's an important word in Social Security, is that security part of it. It is there to provide people with a sense of security, knowing that it's going to be there for us when we need it. We pay into it in our working lives, and then it's going to now in the age of COVID, in the age of this pandemic, which is disproportionately, massively affecting and killing seniors and people with disabilities at just incredibly high rates. And we're also seeing just failures from the administration, from Donald Trump, that are just mind-boggling. The magnitude of the failures coming out of Washington, D.C., out of the Trump administration right now are just, it's hard to process. But through it all, what people can rely on, the rock that they can rely on, is Social Security. You know, people are watching again with that feeling of fear in their stomach, like they did in 2008 and 9. You know, they're watching their 401ks turn into 201ks, and they're wondering, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with this? And again, through it all, Social Security is there for folks when they retire, is there for folks who face a life-changing event and become disabled and can no longer work. And it's there for the children. If the breadwinner of a family passes away, that Social Security is going to be there for the minor children of that family, which includes people who are dying of COVID right now. Those last two buckets are incredibly important and often underappreciated aspects of Social Security. But for the vast majority of Americans, it's the only long-term disability insurance that they have, and it's the biggest life insurance policy that they have. So Social Security is a lifelong insurance, wage insurance product. And it's also a promise between generations. And it represents the best of what we are, of who we are. And I think that's really important right now, when we're seeing especially a lot of the worst of who we are. When you're seeing a lot of things coming out of Donald Trump's land, oh, well, it only kills seniors, or it only kills people with disabilities. That's not true, but that's not important. What's important in this country, we don't just care about, there's no only when it's your mother or your father or your grandmother or your grandfather or you. You know, there's no only in this. And Social Security is that intergenerational pact, that solidarity that shows that together we can do these things that we can't do on our own. And we need that more than ever right now. Right now, what we're seeing is a failure of leadership. And so the people need to get together and work together, raise our voices together. I usually say here, stand in the streets together, but we're going to have to stand Zoom window to Zoom window and raise our voices together so that they can't be ignored. That's the beauty of Social Security, is it really wraps a lot of that into one thing that everyone understands. And I'll just sort of finish this part with, that's why Wall Street hates it. That's why Donald Trump's criminal friends on Wall Street just can't get their greedy little hands on it. There's no money for them there. It works its administrative costs are incredibly low. Less than 1 penny of every dollar that we pay in premiums goes to administer the whole thing. And these Wall Street barons, they see that as a missed opportunity, which is why they miss no opportunity to attack and try to destroy Social Security, including this pandemic. And they're coming after our Social Security right now. Donald Trump is proposing a payroll tax cut as one of the financing mechanisms for economic relief. We believe strongly that we need economic relief. We need a lot more than we've seen so far, but Social Security should play no role in that. Social Security is not a way that you pay for things. The only reason you set that up is because then they're going to come back and try to cut our benefits in the future. So that was a lot, but that right. is the power of Social Security.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that introduction. And, I know too well what it's like to rely on a safety net. When I was only 13 years old, my dad passed away because we couldn't afford his health needs. And my mom was, a home worker. She took care of us. She didn't have a paying job. And that meant we relied on, a little bit of money that the government spared us. And I know I grew up in Morocco, but there's so much parallel in the condition that I've seen here and that I see children rely on here as well. Adding to that it's so heartbreaking to see that someone has spent, all of their life working for us, paying their taxes, raising a family, growing our economy, and then just because of, age or a disability, we give up on them. That's not the America that we believe in. We believe in the America that takes care of its people. And Social Security is one of those very steady hands that has delivered consistently. But as you know, Alex, the average amount that people receive from Social Security is just about $15,000 a year. And in today's economy, that doesn't even pay the rent. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the truth is with Social Security works. It's a beautiful program, everything I said, but benefits are too low. They're just far too low for millions of people around this country. And that's why we need to increase benefits. We need to expand Social Security and increase benefits. And we need to do, I think in the short term, we should do that now because of COVID and because seniors and people with disabilities are disproportionately impacted. Senator Elizabeth Warren has a bill to increase benefits by $200 a month. That would be incredibly needed right now. And that is actually co-sponsored by Senator Wyden, who is the chair, he's the ranking member, sorry, of the Finance Committee. This is his jurisdiction, and so he's been a really strong advocate during these stimulus packages for that expansion. And Senator Schumer, who is the #1, senator in the Democratic Senate, he's also on board. So it's actually the Warren, Wyden, Schumer bill. And Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee for president, is on board. So it's got a lot of support. But the Republicans, and this is absolutely true, it hasn't been reported anywhere yet except here. You're breaking the news. We try to get people to tell this story, but the Republicans are terrified of giving the Democrats a win on expanding Social Security. So they are doing everything they can to keep this from passing, and which does two things. A, it shows just what immoral, craven cowards these Republicans are, that they're willing to hurt their constituents to try to thwart their political opponents. They're actually making folks on Social Security, receiving their Social Security benefits, pawns in their own re-election campaigns. And I hope people learn that and are like, you're going to not get re-elected because you're holding my Social Security benefits, hostage in this political way. But that is a key thing right now, because seniors and people with disabilities and seniors homes and nursing homes and senior centers, assisted living facilities, I mean, it's very bleak. It's really, really hard right now. If COVID gets into one of these facilities, it just rips through, and you're seeing, like case fatality rates or mortality rates of 30%. I mean, just astronomical. So there's so much fear, but then they're locked down as well. So people aren't able to visit, family aren't able to visit. It's just right now we need this immediate relief. So I would just urge everybody who's listening to call both your senators and your representative and just demand that in the next stimulus and stimulus 4, that this increases in there. But obviously the reason the Republicans are terrified of getting this in the stimulus is because they know that we would never stop fighting for that. Obviously, this is a short term in the bill. It's a short term piece, right? It goes away. We would fight to A, increase that amount, and B, to never let it go away. We should permanently be increasing benefits. And then for the I don't know who watches. If you have any, how are we going to pay for it, folks? I don't even know if those people exist anymore. They were super loud before, but now they're a little bit more quiet. But how we are going to pay for it is we're just going to have millionaires and billionaires pay the same rate into Social Security that the rest of us do. Right now, people pay in only up to a certain amount. And after that $133,000, they pay in 100% on that. And then above that, they don't pay in at all. It's called the cap. And we just want to get rid of that cap. And we also want to cover investment income as well, because these Wall Street barons have figured out, they employ the thing that they innovate at is cheating. They innovate ways to get around the system with their money. So they send it in boats to the islands, so that, as that half the banking infrastructure is just set up to help rich people avoid paying their fair share. So we think that we can just have millionaires and billionaires pay the same rate on all of their income, just like the rest of us. And then we can increase Social Security for everyone forever.
Yep, I'm 100% in agreement with you. And these are the policies that we're pushing for right now, through Senator Warren and other folks in the House. And these are the policies that I will be pushing as well when elected. In terms of, you mentioned a really good point about, elders dying from COVID-19, being that they're in high risk. And there are two ways that they're dying right now. One is directly by COVID-19, and I see a lot of my constituents in Newton in a nursing home that's been affected. And as of yesterday, we lost 45 people. And 23 staff have been tested positive. And the other way is many nursing homes are being emptied out based on age and being used as an extension for hospitals. And so, I was talking to a friend from Fall River who lost his father, not because of COVID-19 infection, but because of not being able to have his son with him, and he had a disability, and at the hospital they didn't allow him to come in, and his father was already kicked out of the nursing home, and it completely destabilized his health and his life, and he passed away. And so the complexities of what's happening to folks, losing their homes, especially seniors losing their homes, or losing their lives or their partners' lives. These are issues that are at the very heart of our districts. And in our districts, we rely on Social Security. 1 out of every 5 people rely on Social Security, and you know more about what's going on here. Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, your district is not alone in that across the country, but in your district, right around 20% of people in your district rely on Social Security. Your district, these are 2019 numbers, but 752,000 people in the district, and 137,000 of them rely on Social Security. This is they're getting their benefits that they've earned, and that includes around 10,000 children. So you have a huge amount of people who are relying on Social Security, multiple generations, people with disabilities, seniors, children, and the total into your district is $2.4 billion in benefits. That's the most like reliable revenue that could come into your district. We know that it's been well studied with Social Security benefits. You know, that's money that people are spending. They're not like the rich people who, you know, get given a tax handout and then they immediately bank it in the Caymans, and it does nobody any good except for a yacht builder. You know, when folks are getting their Social Security checks that they've earned, they're going to spend that directly into the economy, which is also why increasing benefits is so beneficial, not just to the people who need it. Because I mean, who could legitimately live on $15,000, $16,000, $18,000 a year right now? It's just not, that's not credible. And so, you know, we think that not only should people, we definitely agree with the sort of slogan that is now accepted into the mainstream, and establishment Democrats are now on board with expanding Social Security. For example, Joe Biden, you know, like it took a lot of effort. We were at the front of that effort. It took many years to get the establishment Dems away from the so-called grand bargain and into expansion. And, you know, it's like after a lifetime of hard work, no one should retire in poverty. We think that that's absolutely true. We actually think we should go further than that, though. Not only should people not retire in poverty, people should be able to retire with a good amount of dignity. And to do that, we need to expand Social Security, but you actually have to start earlier than that, right? We need to increase wages. The number one way to build a secure retirement is to have a well-paying job throughout one's life, a secure, well-paying job with benefits. We think defined benefit pension plans need to be absolutely, people need to talk about the fact that we were robbed by Wall Street. People used to have pensions, and then Wall Street came in and they sold us a bill of goods. The 401k, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. I think a lot of young people think that that's all there is. They don't know that there used to be a pension, that you used to have, you would work and you would build up a pension, and then that pension would be there for you every month with a check. And that's not what a 401k system is. 401k is just savings, tax preference savings. And I know you know this, but the people who can save are rich people. 401ks benefit primarily the wealthy. Even if a lot of people have 401ks, and many people don't, but most people's 401ks are not going to cut it for retirement. They, you know, what looks like a bunch of money when you actually divide it out over the years that you'll need retirement income is paltry. So we need to increase wages across the board. We need to absolutely eliminate the gender wage gap, because that gender wage gap follows women into retirement. So women are at a huge disadvantage when it comes to retirement security, because the same disparity in wages just continues into retirement. The lower wages means lower Social Security benefits. So absolutely eliminate that. Get rid of student debt across the board. This is like the dumbest experiment that we've come up with. And Wall Street figured out how to profit off of this. And the idea that you would saddle young people with crushing levels of student debt in order to get an education, and the point of an education is so that they can earn higher wages, but you're going to dial back any gains that you get from the supposed higher wages, which also aren't there. But even if they were, it's all eaten up by paying down student debt. So how is a person supposed to do the right thing and save for retirement when any money that they have is going to pay down their student debt? So there's no benefits. Wages are too low. There's a huge gender wage gap. And, get into the racial disparities there, and you see it, what it's across the board, there's a gender wage gap, but it's worse for women of color, obviously, Black women and Latinas. And then you add on the student debt, and you have a system that's not broken. And I sort of refuse to say it. It's working really well. It's just not actually set up for us. It's set up for these plutocrats on Wall Street. It works really well for them. They've turned our health into a wealth extraction system, right? We don't get health care here. We get denied health care from an insurance system. That's how they make money. They take our premiums, deny our care. We don't get educated here. We get turned into a giant liability, a walking liability where we have to pay down this debt for our entire lives. They've literally turned every piece of our lives into a way for them to profit. They've financialized our humanity. And that's what we're fighting back against, which we also think Social Security is the embodiment of the opposite of that. It's the embodiment of us collectively working together. And it benefits all of us in a way that we couldn't do on our own.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. We got a question from Michelle Millett. She's asking, hi, Michelle. Can you talk about how Social Security and housing intersects for the elderly and others on fixed income?
Absolutely. So there's a good amount of data, and one of the things that is sort of different for my cohort, my age cohort, and younger, is the housing instability. For older cohorts, the housing market was not as choppy. So you actually do see a lot of assets in aggregate with seniors where they don't own where they don't owe a mortgage and they own their house. That's actually predominantly whenever you see any chart where it's trying to foment this generational warfare, where they're saying like young people don't have anything because all the greedy geezers took it. That's Wall Street trying to get the two people who they're taking money from to point at each other and say, oh, it's them, when it's actually we should be pointing together at Wall Street who's robbing us, because we should be able to own a home after working our entire lives and be able to live in that home. Now that's for the lucky people who have figured that out, and Social Security there is just as important. My godparents, Nick and Nina, who Nick recently passed away, they lived in their home in Delaware for 35 years. Nick was a union welder. They came from Italy after Nick was the youngest member of the partisans fighting the Nazis. He literally fought Nazis in Italy. And then they came over here, became citizens. Nick was a union welder. He worked his whole life until the factory was shipped overseas. And that again, Wall Street led great idea that we should send all our manufacturing overseas and get rid of all these well-paying jobs. And so at the end of their lives, at the end of his life, and Nina is still alive, it was Social Security. That was their income. And they did own their home, and lucky for them, they were able to have some independence because of that. But for millions of seniors who have astronomical poverty rates, when you tease it out from an aggregate and you zoom in, right? So averages can really skew things. But when you zoom in to senior poverty, you're looking at folks who still have to pay rent or are caught up in the non-existent long-term care system that we have, right? Where, they have a chronic medical condition and we literally don't have a system to deal with that. So the only thing that we have is people rely on Medicaid, but Medicaid is not actually a long-term care system. So even with Medicaid, you have huge costs that people are facing. And if they don't have family to help them with that cost, the only thing they have is Social Security. So when it comes to housing stability, Social Security is very often it's the only thing that's keeping someone with a stable roof over their head. Because even in the case of, say, Nick and Nina, if they didn't have that income coming in, they wouldn't have been able to stay in their house. They would have to sell that asset and then spend that down over their life, which is actually what they had to do when they moved to long-term care. So even in the good situation, Social Security is key for housing stability. And then for people who are housing unstable, it's just the only thing. You know, making a choice of paying rent, buying the prescription drugs that you need, and, you know, heaven forbid that they get an extra $5 that they can send to their grandchild on the birthday. Again, we don't think that the system should be set up for bare minimum, right? Like there's more than enough money in this country. There's so much wealth in this country. If we just stopped these sick, because I think that the plutocrats, there's a sickness there. They can't stop hoarding money. Now, what do you need all of those billions of dollars for? And anyways, if you can't tell, I often pivot to my all the money that Wall Street has sucked out of America is why we're faced with seniors making decisions of, you know, cutting their pills in half or not being able to pay the heating bill.
And, you know, Alex, many folks in my district, you know, resonate with the story of Nick and Nina, and especially folks in Fall River who've had, you know, industries after industries come and then being swooped away and shipped overseas. And not even, you know, even overseas, they're being shipped away to basically slave labor, and leaving families here without pay, without any safety net. And many, actually, I met a really nice lady in Taunton as well. And she told me about her dad, who was, you know, old of age and, you know, needed long-term care. And she had, you know, spent all of her savings to take care of her dad. But at that point, she has exhausted everything. And the answer was that they're going to send him to some, you know, long-term care facility, and they would have to sell his house to pay for that. The fact is, many families in Taunton live very tight together. You find, you know, the father and his children, they grew up, and his grandchildren are there, and they're all in like one, you know, circle of homes that they've built themselves. And this was just a heartbreaking situation to see, that they had to make this really difficult choice to send the father away and to long-term care and sell the home. This, you know, the fabric of our communities is being ripped apart, and it's so unnecessary. And as you said, Alex, you know, you and I know very well, and we know firsthand what the big bank CEOs are planning, how they're looking to benefit from people, you know, selling you the idea of a 401k, but at the same time, as soon as an economic downturn hits, they would stop making matches. And they have already stopped making matches right now. And the next is layoffs, right? And every stimulus package, and I actually prefer to call it a relief package. We're not trying to, there's no stimulus. The economy is stopped. So we're trying to relief. And in this relief package, every time we're seeing bailing out the big corporations, bailing out the big banks, and we see that it doesn't work, right? The Dow goes up a little bit and then it plummets the next day. And millions of people, like we're up to 17 million people who have applied for unemployment. And that number doesn't even reflect the realities on the ground of those who haven't even gotten to that application. So, you know, in this time, and what I'm hopeful for is that we would have learned our lessons from 2008 and that we will not write blank checks to Wall Street during a crisis, that we would actually, write direct checks to people on a regular basis so that they can continue to pay their bills and to consume. We would increase their Social Security and save our economy from the ground up. There is no way we can, trust Wall Street to do the right thing. Their right thing is to make profits for the super rich, for the super investors, for the CEOs, and they're very good at that. Our turn is to be very good at legislating, at protecting the American people, at protecting the worker, at protecting the elders and the children. And that's why I really, I truly appreciate all the work that you do, Alex, at Social Security Works, and I look forward to continuing our partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.